As we discussed in the last session, people in our positions tend to forget about overhead. And there are a lot of things that go in overhead. And one of the biggest things people forget is they tend to think if I'm working from home, I don't have any overhead. And that is 100% incorrect. Everyone has overhead. I don't care if you only do hand stitching and it's needles and thread, that's part of your overhead. And the big thing that everybody forgets to put into their overhead are benefits. People leave, people go and get a real job so that they have benefits. But you too can provide yourself with benefits if you put them in your overhead.
Oh,
And
preach it, sister, preach it.
I
That
mean,
is so important.
it's so simple, but it's like, oh, yeah, I guess that's not a thing. I mean, the reason big corporations or even, small corporations offer benefits is because they build it into their pricing, and we forget to build it into our pricing. Okay, so one of the things I'm going to screen share at some point, one of my Excel sheets, and you will all have access to this. It is a very basic spreadsheet, but that's all you need to calculate your overhead. I'm going to talk you through the numbers that go in and how it works, but you can simply plug in all your numbers and look at the number at the end and just say, okay, and just use that number. You don't have to understand the math behind it. And the math is quite simple. It's all adding and subtracting and a little bit of multiplication and division, but it's, there's no calculus involved on this. Okay. So one of the things, and I am going to go, let me pull up. So this is just a common, like I said, it's a shop rate calculator. It will take into consideration whatever your wage that you want to be, like if you were working for someone else with benefits. And then you get to add in all your benefits, but you're also adding in all of your expenses. Okay, so I'm starting with non-billable items. And those are items that you have to buy for your business that are not directly billable to a single client. For instance, if I'm doing a bunch of embroidery on a wedding gown and I order in specific threads to do that embroidery, that gets billed directly to that wedding gown. But for alterations, uh, things like thread, chalk, pins, I don't separately bill that client for the amount of thread I use to hem their pants or the swipe of chalk that I use to mark a hem. So those kind of things I don't it's quite impractical to put into your to build directly to a client. But they are items that cost money and they are tax deductible and they are part of your overhead. Okay. And I have written all of these things that if you so desire, you can list each of these things separately. So for instance, oh, I bought thread today and this is how much thread I bought. And this is how much chalk I bought. All these things. Now, the other thing that is more practical, especially if you order all of these items from a single source, for instance, 75% of my thread and chalk and snaps and buttons come from Wawak. So I can just add in a Wawak. I can just add in a total for my Wawak order. And this column takes everything per year. So you need to go back through your books from last year, or you can estimate from this year, but I'm going to just use the random, item of, we're going to say $2,000 throughout the whole year for this. Okay. Little things that we tend to forget about, but we do buy. Well, I buy every year because I still use a hand, a written in appointment book. but I can put that in. How much tape do you use? That's a thing, like office supplies, we tend to forget. They're not sewing supplies, so we tend to forget them. But I use a lot of Scotch tape, paper clips, printer paper, things like this, all of these little items, pattern paper, patterns, seam rippers, tracing wheels, all those kind of things are tax deductible and are part of your overhead. Any books, CDs, or DVDs that you get that are sewing related, I mean, not all of them, but any sewing books, any tailoring books, any, books on CDs that you buy, or, oh, this DVD was on how to make trims. All those things go in here. Now, in theory, a book or a DVD will last more than 1 year. So this annual purchases, these are all the things that you tend to buy in a year. Okay. Um, even though books and CDs and DVDs last longer than a year, I have a tendency to spend about the same amount on new books and CDs and DVDs every single year. So instead of trying to hash them into, books are forever and divide them out by the 50-year lifespan, blah, 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 that kind of stuff, I just simply, I spend about, I'm going to say $250 a year on random books. Your any type of sewing magazines, your thread subscription, whether they're digital subscriptions or your paper subscriptions. I have a embroidery magazine that I subscribe to. Things like that can go in there. And you can use, here I'm obviously just pulling numbers out of the air and putting them in there. But, really think about it and go through your books and go through your receipts from last year, your purchases from last year, and look and see, oh gosh, I really did buy, $30 worth of machine needles here and hand needles and chalk or whatever kind of things that you purchase to just have on hand for alterations or for things that you can't really you can't bill directly to a client. Room freshener, right? We all use that or open the doors or
I
whatever
have
you
to.
need to do.
I have
Yeah,
to. It's part of my atmosphere. Whoops, I just hit my speaker.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
part of
It
my atmosphere for my fitting room.
100% and a really nice, refreshing, relaxing smell goes wonders for putting a client at ease, especially I think everybody here is supposed to be in wedding alterations, correct?
Not
Especially brides.
necessarily, but for the
Okay.
most part.
Yes, and so especially for brides, they tend to be uptight or anxious because weddings are a big deal to them, even though we we see hundreds of dresses a year and we whatever. But for them it's really important. So to have a nice, relaxing scent, aromatherapy has been around for centuries and it works. So doing that, and it doesn't hurt for your jeans clients and stuff like that either. If you've got cowboys coming to you, you don't necessarily want to smell like a barn, but it's nice to have everything smell very, have a nice clean smell. And my favorite is there's a little mixture of, I think it's lavender and eucalyptus, and it's used very often in spas. And I love that smell. And so I put it around for, right before the client comes in. Okay. Other things for your non-billable items are items that you only buy every 2 or 3 years because they last a bit longer or you don't go through them as much. For instance, labels. If you do custom work and you put labels in your garments, if you order 100 of them, you might not make 100 custom garments a year. So whatever order you have is going to last a few years for you. Garment bags, same thing. I get the similar to these, just a lot of the bridal shops use them. I have them for either my custom work or if a bride comes in and doesn't have one. I order those by a couple dozen at a time. Sometimes I go through them in a year, sometimes I don't. Hangers. All your hangers are tax deductible and part of your overhead. I keep on shirt hangers, I keep dress hangers. I like the velvet hangers because they grip the edges and don't let things slide off, especially if something's got a wide neck on it. Any sort of notebooks that you use, sketch pads, light bulbs for your overhead lights. Dusting and cleaning tools, rotary blades. When I buy them, these can go in the annual purchase or the biannual, however you do them. I tend to buy them in bulk because that's what I do. A welcome mat. I have one right outside my door. After a while, I realize the sun and the snow has faded it. So it's nice to have a nice fresh one every few years. Thumb drives in case you have to transfer, because I'm old. If you need, it's not a floppy disk, but if you need to transfer things or save things, whatever technology you need for that. Business cards, if you are still using them. Interfacing, things that you only tend to buy every 2 or 3 years so that you have it in stock for clients. All of those go into bi or triannual purchases. And then this one is, okay, I need to figure out how to move this guy. Okay, 5 to 10 year purchases. We have a lot of things in our business that last 5 to 10 years. Rugs, your sewing machine, a serger, specialty machines, an iron, pressing tools, drafting tools, task lights, office chairs, storage bins, scissors, rotary cutters, rotary mat. Yes, your mat wears out. Get a new one every few years. Presser feet, rulers, pliers, boning cutters, pinking shears, office tools, staplers, hole punches, whatever you need. If they are something that you are going to buy every 5 to 10 years, put them in this category. They are still part of your overhead. And almost all of these things, I think all of these things that are covered on this sheet are tax deductible. Now, I'm not an accountant, so double check with your accounting if you question anything, but all of these are tax deductible if they are for your sewing business. Okay. Now, there are a lot of things that are going to last more than 10 years, but you can expect, and years. I'm very excited about the number of years here, apparently. Even though, like my shelves, like this one behind me, all the shelves I have, I've so far had for 20 years when I remodeled this room and put up a new one, put in new room, new shelves, everything. But they might break down. I don't know that. They might get damaged. They might, the kids crawl up them or whatever it may be. So it's nice to have a time limit on them. And what that does, it will give you an allowance to buy new shelves or more shelves every 10 or so years in case you need them. To hold like fabric. I heard some people just buy fabric randomly to store in their rooms. Garment racks, your mirror. Again, my mirror, I have a big 3-way mirror. Have a big 3-way mirror if you can, or position mirrors so that people can see the sides and backs of themselves without having to crane their neck too much. Get a big one. Mine so far has lasted 30 years, but anything can happen. It can break at any time, right? Hopefully I don't have bad luck. You can put your remodeling in here. If you want to remodel your room every 10 years, you can put that in here, the cost of remodeling. And, even if you want to allow, say, $5,000 to remodel your sewing room, put that in there. If you're going to spend that every 10 years, if you want to put $10,000 in there, whatever you feel is a reasonable amount to put in there, and then it's put in there for the future. This is a way to keep ahead of new expenses instead of catching up on them. So if I didn't have any of this stuff accounted for in my overhead, that means I have to pay for this out of pocket, say, put it on a credit card, and now I have to pay off my credit card. If you do this, all of this is already accounted for, and you've got it in your account to use for these items. Okay. Tables, drafting tables, new cabinets, thread racks. I mean, you think, oh, a thread rack doesn't break, but every once in a while mine fall off the wall, and when they fall, all the little dowels break off. So I've repaired it a few times, but yeah, I can probably use some new ones. And so that's in there. Dress forms. Dress forms are expensive. put those in there. And especially if you're not buying the sturdy industrial ones, there's nothing wrong with the less expensive ones, but they do wear out. The mechanisms wear out. The plastic gets sticky. There's weird things that go on with that. Put in to get a new dress form. This is your business. It's a business expense. Okay. Seating for your client, chairs, stools, whatever is in your sewing room for yourself or your client, that you need something for your clients to sit on. Okay, if you have equipment like a button cover press or, you know, some of the heavy duty grommet tools, those things are like cast iron, they're lasting forever. You know, that and the dies that come with it, you know, put those in there. They're expensive and you want those covered in your overhead. Okay, now at the bottom of all of these, okay, and you can always at the bottom, I think of every, oh no, I didn't put it in here. You can simply put in a total. You don't have to put in, you know, again, I spent, you know, $100 on labels and $50 on notepad. I spent 30 on a new welcome mat. You can put those all in there, or you can simply put, you know, a big total if you've gone through and you just don't want to separate out little things. And I'm gonna guess and say, okay, I spent $1,000 here. Whoops, and I put that in the wrong place. Okay. We'll put this here. Okay, and I'm just using round numbers for the sake of simplicity. And same thing here for 5 to 10 year purchases. A lot of these things can be really expensive. $2,000 for a sewing machine, maybe $1,000 for a serger, you know, $1,000 for a specialty machine, you know, boiler irons. Get a good office chair, get an ergonomic office chair that is made for your size. You know, all these other things. And then we can just we can also, like I said, we can put a big total. We're going to, you know, jump that up, or, you know, maybe $1,000 here. And then same thing here. These 10-year ones are going to be really expensive. You know, light fixtures, tables are going to be, you know, we'll say $500 for that. Dress form, those are going up in price. Dies are, you know, a good 100, 200 a piece. Whoops. And now I'll put these in the right category so that, and my thing is not working. So, there we go. We'll just, I'm going to put, let's do another 5,000 here for random other things in here. Okay, and then down at the very bottom, I have subtotals for everything. Whoop. So your annual expense here is, this is your subtotal for your annual expense, which is okay, which is your total for your annual expenses. Okay, and then your total biannual, and I did reword this in the other one. I'm going to pull up my other sheet here. Okay, and let me, okay, got numbers put in there. You can enter a total for the year. Here, so here's my annual for my annual expenses, and here's the total for the annual expenses. Here's my biannual buy or try. I find it hard to predict if you're going to end up buying something every 2 years or every 3 years. You know what? This math is all beneficial to you. So instead of dividing some by 2 and some by 3 for how many you're going to spend per year, I simply have it divided by 2. And that gives you a little bit of extra cushion for buying more things. Buying more things. Who doesn't love that? Okay. So your total biannual expense for a year is half of what your biannual expenses are. Your totals for your 5 to 10 year are divided by 5. Yeah. So 5 to 10 years, if you spend 3 over this dollar amount, this is divided by 5 to give you an average annual expense for these things. Okay. And if for the things over 10, I've got it's divided by 10. So then each of these numbers, each of your average annual costs are then put right here. Total average annual non-billable items is, for this example, is $2,801. Okay.
Okay, that makes sense to me. You divide, whether it's the biannual or the 5 or the 10, you divide that total by like 5 for the
It,
5 to 10 year. Okay, and then
exactly.
add that up. So that's
Yes.
what, okay, that makes
Mhm.
good sense.
Yeah, and you don't even have to do the math. It does it for you. And and the spreadsheet has this all. I've tried to make it sound very clear. But it's all here. Everything is labeled as clearly as feasible for fitting into a square in Excel. Um,
Mhm.
and then and so then this number is saved for later. Okay. So these were non-billable items, physical items that you can touch and hold and say, look what I bought. Look, I bought this pen and it was a very nice pen and it's very expensive. So I put it in my expenses. Okay. Now, the next thing is non-billable expenses that aren't tangible. Okay. So that includes, and we'll just use this sheet. I realize it's easier to have something that's already numbered in there. Okay, non-billable expenses. Okay, your travel and your education. If you go to conference, ASDP conference, this is one of my pet peeves is when people are asked, why aren't you coming to conference this year? And they say, no, I can't afford it. Put it in your overhead and you can afford it. Okay. Cover
Or
your
come to the class and have Barbie teach you to do that.
exactly. Conference fees, there's usually kit fees involved somewhere. What is your flight or your driving time for that? Your transportation to and from the airport or around town, if that's your thing. How much food are you spending? How much did your hotel cost? All of those are expenses for your conference fees. Okay. Now, my understanding, again, not an accountant, some of the food they're getting kind of picky on which meals that you're allowed to tax deduct. Because there's a difference on whether you're traveling or whether you're at home, and there's all these little minutia things. But even if it's not tax deductible, you can build it into your overhead. You've got to eat, and I guarantee, well, most likely you're eating food that is more expensive than the bag of potatoes you bought last week to eat at home because potatoes are cheap. And I'm in Idaho, so they're like $1 for a 10-pound bag. Feed you for 2 months. Okay. Your hotel. How many sewing workshops do you attend or would you like to attend? Sewing workshops are a really good way to increase your skills. And even though there are a lot of Zoom calls like this one, and Zoom classes and Craftsy classes, there's nothing wrong with video classes, but there is no substitute for going to a class in person and learning in person. You get to learn from what the other students are doing, and you can have the teacher will look at you and watch what you're doing and can correct even little things like, oh, you know what, you're holding your needle a little inefficiently. Here, let me show you how I do it. And hopefully that will help you along the way. There are
You
always
know,
little
Barbie, you are so right on that. I mean, I do. I teach online, but I love going to ASD conference and learning in person. So there's no comparison. It is so wonderful. And the networking. I mean, how do I know you? Because of ASD conference.
That's
And
right.
you just learn so much more and so much deeper into your brain it goes.
Yes, 100%, 100%. And they're even with video classes or books or, and when I started this, there were no video classes. They weren't a thing. And so I learned a lot by books because I felt I couldn't afford to go to these classes. And one, you can learn a lot from books, especially if you're a book person, but the first class I went to, I'll give her a little plug here, was Susan Calgi and her, it was a dressmaking class. And had I known how much I would have learned, I would have ponied up the money for that years before. There is nothing that replaces in-person learning. And yes, it is expensive. You're paying for the workshop. If you have to travel to the workshop, you're paying for the hotel at the workshop, all these other things that add up. It is expensive, but you get so much out of it. You learn so much. So build it into your overhead and don't hesitate to go. You'll learn it so much. Okay. So for these sewing workshops, I just have, again, random numbers. A lot of sewing workshops tend to be in the $1,500 range. You might have kit fees, flight, transportation, food, hotel, all those kind of things. How many video seminars do you buy or purchase or watch? All of that goes into your non-billable expenses. And this one is the category of travel and education, just so I find that if I have categories, it's easier to think it through instead of, what did you spend money on last year? Okay. Okay. Office and banking fees. Those are part of your business. Okay. If you subscribe to QuickBooks, or if you have to buy a new QuickBooks thing every few years or whatever, put that in here. Any PayPal fees, your Venmo fees, Zelly, any bank fees that you incur for anything, credit card applications, credit card fees, any apps that you buy. I personally am old school and I use paper and pen for a lot of my things, for my scheduling. Here's my appointment book, all that kind of stuff. But I know I've heard there are apps out there that do all that kind of stuff for you, but most of them cost something. Okay. Build that in. That is part of your overhead. Okay. If you place any ads, and technically social media doesn't cost anything, but I know that there are ways you can, if you pay an extra $50, it'll do other things for you. I don't know because I don't do that, but I know that there can be costs involved. Okay. Things that, again, non-tangible. Get your scissors sharpened. How much does it cost to maintain your machine? How much did the repairs cost? Or say, because I needed a new button on it, or the new little door that shuts the bobbin case, things like that. Use an average. Okay. You'll know your machines well. How often do you have to do that? Put those in there. Okay. Now, this last category is benefits. And this is a thing that everyone forgets to add in. And it's so simple that it's like, just add it. That's how other people have benefits, is because their company adds in benefits. So health insurance, these numbers, I totally pulled at random. But I know health insurance is expensive. Yes, it's going to vary depending on how old you are and where you live and what's available in your area, all those kind of things. But put in your annual health insurance here. If you have a spouse that is covering your health insurance, put your health insurance cost in here anyway. Just because somebody else is paying for it doesn't mean it's not a benefit that you should have access to. And God forbid something happened and that person is no longer here and you have no benefits, you need your health insurance here so that you've got it for yourself and you can afford it by yourself. Okay. How much do you spend in eyeglasses a year, or the eye doctor, right? Dental. And the thing that I don't get is, a lot of people have health insurance through another company, but it doesn't cover eye, vision, or dental. Are those not part of your body? Look, they're right here. Everybody can see. It's right here. So put those in. Okay. Put in some money for your retirement fund. How much do you want to contribute to a retirement fund every year? A lot of people have a 401k. How much are they putting in every year? Put in that same amount. Okay. Usually it's a percentage of your wages, but you can pick a number and put it in there however you want. And then I again, don't quote me on this, but I believe 401ks are usually done by big corporations. So like I myself, since I'm self-employed, I can't open a 401k, but some people have a 401k existing from a previous job, or you can open an IRA, or stick it in a money market account and, be your own retirement fund manager. But this is, you can put in a retirement fund. That's part of your overhead. If I work
Barbie,
for,
I've just got to cut in here again. This is so important that we take care of ourselves, take care of our futures, take care of our retirement and our health, and also those things, like the remodeling, things in the future. Taking care of our future, so important. It's a big part of alleviating stress and just feeling legitimate. Like this is my career and I'm taking care of my personnel who is me.
yes,
I just love this so much. It is so important. Okay, go
yeah, and
on. I just
yeah,
want
yeah, yeah, of course. And and this is stuff, and I'll get through this last part first before I go off on another tangent. But these other things, um, this health insurance, your eyeglasses, your dental, those are all tax deductible. Um, check with your accountant. But I fill them out when I have my taxes done, but I fill out the amount that I spend on that and I let them deal with it. But there's they do something with those in the tax numbers. Okay. Um, Other things that are nice benefits to have, and we wouldn't think twice if a company offered them. There's no reason we can't offer these for ourselves. You want a monthly massage? Put that in there. We spend a lot of time hunched over because we have poor posture and sewing and sitting like this all day long. Okay. A monthly massage would do wonders. And guess what? A monthly massage is cheaper than back surgery. Just throwing that out there. Okay. If you need a bi-weekly manicure because you have a lot of close-ups on your hands, put that in there. Put it in there. Your hands show. Okay. Um, if you want a gym membership, a lot of places have a gym built right into their office and you can use it whenever you want. There's no reason you can't have that too. And if you don't want a gym membership, you can get gym equipment and make your own gym in your house if you have space. Okay. I'm not saying that these are necessarily tax deductible, but these are definitely something that you can put in your overhead. Okay.
excellent.
All right.
Excellent. And we can become our dream employer. This is can be our
Yes.
company can be the dream place to work for because we are
Yes.
adding those benefits. I
Yes,
love it.
exactly. And by doing this, if you have an employee or choose to hire somebody else to do it, you can then offer them these things too because it's part of the overhead. Okay. Okay. So here are my subtotals: education, office and bank, benefits. Okay. Yeah, those are big numbers. And here's my average annual non-billable expenses: $29,000, almost $30,000 for these numbers that I plugged in. Yeah, but that's that's okay. It's just a number, and that's going to work into your overhead. Okay. Okay. Now the last thing to look at this is non-billable time. Okay. This is the time that we spend um, in our business working that cannot be billed to directly to a single client. For instance, if I answer the phone and answer some questions, that person may or may not become a client of mine. I'm not going to charge them five minutes of my time and track them down to bill them. That is just, it's considered non-billable time. Okay. If you are somebody who does free consultations, that is non-billable time, especially if they decide that it's not for them. Now, if you do a consultation and they decide that, yes, I am going to use you, build that consultation into their fee. But there's going to be times where simply you're communicating with people who may or may not become a client. All of that is non-billable time. Okay. I feel like I'm okay. Nope. Just kidding. I thought I was missing something, but I'm not. Okay. So this is, let me start over here. For your yearly calendar, this is done in weeks because it's just nice round numbers, easy to work with. You don't have to nitpick. Okay. How many numbers? And I am in, I feel like I'm in my wrong thing again. Okay, let me put this down. Here we go. Okay, Edie, are you seeing this where it's on
Oh,
vacation and
yes,
there's
the
4
vacation?
and that it says 4 weeks?
Absolutely. In fact,
Okay.
it's puts a sparkle in my eyes. Paid
Yes.
vacation.
Yes. So these are going to be items that you need to be paid for, but you are not billable for this time. Like you can't bill a single client. I would, and if you do have too many of those clients, let me know. Okay, how many weeks of vacation do you want? You know what? Standard, a lot of people use 2 weeks. Oh my God, Europe uses 4 to 6 weeks. I mean, there's no reason that we can't copy, better environments and do that for ourselves. Okay, 4 weeks of vacation. I tend to spend about a week at conference. If I'm gonna go to a workshop, I go on workshops and I also like to take workshops where I can. I'm gonna allow 4 weeks for sewing workshops. Sick time, 2 weeks. You never know. Okay. Research and development. This is here, and I put in 4 weeks. I put in 4 weeks so that this is basically 1 week a quarter during the course of a year where I can spend a week working on something that I want to learn more about that is not going to eat into my, like, I can't, oh, well, I've got to finish all these wedding gowns. I don't have time to do this for me. This is still me time, but it is very much work specific. So if I want to learn how to knit so that I can add these little knitted booties to, when I have pregnant women or whatever it is, I can use this week to learn that. Okay. Pattern drafting. A lot of people struggle with pattern drafting. If you want to learn it, and the only way to learn to be good at pattern drafting is to do it. So watching a video, you will never understand it. You have got to do it. So if you've got a week to sit and study your pattern drafting, do it. That's what this research and development is for. I really don't have a better name, but everybody understands kind of what research and development is. Okay. If I want to practice, cutting out lace, if I want to work on my beading, I do tambour beading, but I'm not very good at it. I'm going to spend a week doing just tambour beading. I'm going to speed up, and now I can offer this as a viable, means to part of my business. Okay. This is to practice whatever you need to practice to get better at your job. Okay. That makes sense?
That makes perfect sense.
Okay. So my subtotal here is 15 weeks. So that's 15 weeks that I am not working that I need to incorporate into my calendar. Okay. That I'm not working billable time. Okay. Now, the second column is find how much you are available. How many hours are you available to work per week? Because it is generally less than we think it is. Okay. So for this, I have starting assumed hours. Okay. I'm not fooling myself. I'm not working 40 hours a week. I work about 35. Okay. I work generally 10 to 5-ish a day. I take half hour to an hour for lunch. That is not at all a steady schedule because I don't keep steady schedules. But it's a good rule of thumb. Okay. Now go back in, and do you have to tend or help with your kids or your grandkids? Okay. Do you take time off when they come home from school so that you can spend time with them? How many hours a week do you do that? If you spend an hour a week every day after school, that's 5 hours a week. Okay. Many of us have aging parents. Does it fall on you to take care of them? How much time do you spend tending to your parents and your just a second, sorry. Hey, yeah, just drop it there. I'll talk to you later. Bye. Sorry. Um, how much time do you have tending to your parents? Okay, and that tends to be a lot, I know. Okay. Do you run errands during the day? How long do do you do it once a week, twice a week? How many times do how much time do you do that? And I probably spend a couple hours a week running errands. Okay. Household tasks. Because most of us work out of our home, including me, I have a tendency to do household tasks during working hours. I have a load of dishes going right now in my dishwasher. I have a load of laundry going right now in my dryer. Do I do that every day? No. But do I do it occasionally? Yeah, I do. But then it's done for the rest of the night, right? So if you don't do that, great. You don't have to put anything in there. Here's a little thing that I just threw in there. Naps. How many naps do you take a week? And how much time do you spend taking a nap? You know what? I go through bouts kind of up and down. There are some weeks I take a little nap every day. There are other times I feel okay. I don't need a nap. But if you're a napper, there's nothing wrong with that. Put that time in there. Okay. Here I do have this is just a little chart. These aren't they're not for calculations, but they're just for you to look at. If you only spend 5 minutes a day tending your kids because they don't deserve it, you can put 0.08 per hour that are hours. So this is done for hours. So if you only know like, oh, I spend 20 minutes a day doing this or that, you can use a decimal for your hour, and that's what this is for here. Okay. And then finally, over this last section, these are your non-billable working hours per week. Okay. How much time do you spend answering your phone? Okay. Now, there are times when I do randomly answer my phone, even if it's not, if it's a non-contact, it shows up and I don't know who it is. But very often I am booked out for months and months. And it is much easier to have my answering machine, voicemail, tell somebody I am booked out until this day than for me to try and break it in when they're like, oh, are you open right now? Okay, I'm going to come on by. Okay. So I let a lot of my calls go to voicemail. If it's somebody I know, yeah, I pick it up. But most of the time I let it go to voicemail. And if it's important, they'll leave a message. Okay. How much time do you respond to texts and emails? This is much more common for me. I end up doing a lot of emails, a lot of texts. Brides, send you pictures and say, hey, I have this dress. How much is it going to cost to alter? Blah, blah, blah. Okay. How much time do you spend on social media? Hopefully you're not sitting there doom scrolling and you're looking hopefully at other things of interest, like, ooh, I can see what Dee Dee's doing this week. Or I'm posting something like, ooh, I have some classes coming up. Look what I'm doing, type thing. Okay. How many hours a week do you do that? How much time do you spend cleaning and tidying up your sewing room? Okay. How much time on average per week do you spend on consultations? How much time do you spend making up a schedule? I do that a lot. That's my thing. Okay. How much time do you shop for supplies? Oh, I need this. Oh, I need that. Okay. Oh, let's look at Mood because I need black silk. And then now I'm looking at all the other pretty silks that they offer, and I might end up, scrolling for a while. Okay. How much time does it take to order you supply? How much time do you spend networking? Okay. Driving to and from work-related things. Because we are self-employed, and if you work out of your house, I don't know if this applies if you are, you can include this if you have a brick and mortar business. I don't know how much mileage is actually tax deductible, but how much time do you spend typically a week driving to or from a client's house if you do special, if you do house calls, okay? Driving to or from the store to pick up thread because you've got to order it and you need it today. Those types of things. How much time do you spend doing that on average per week? And how much website maintenance do you do? I put half an hour a week. I don't tend to my website every week, but my goal is every 2 to 3 months. And then it takes me, several hours to remember how to get back in and change everything. So, on average, I can say it probably averages out to half an hour a week. Okay. I had something else really clever to put in there. Now I forgot. But this
Okay,
is
this
any.
per week. This is per week. This column here, right?
Yep. Non-billable working hours per week. I can put that
Okay.
in too. Okay. Hours per week. And again, if you only spend, you'll notice there's decimals here. So if I spend 25 minutes doing this, you can put in 0.42. That's your decimal equivalent for minutes. Okay. And this is, again, all of the stuff. The reason there's open lines between underneath all of these is so you can add in anything that is specific for you. Okay. Oh, okay. So over here, my subtotal here for the number of weeks I am available to work every year on average is, these are the number of weeks I'm not working is 15. Okay. Includes my vacation, conferences, workshops, sick time, research and development, 15 weeks. And so there are 52 weeks in a year. 52 minus 15 is 37. So the number of weeks in my work year is 37. Okay. You don't even have to remember that. It goes into the totals on the next page. Okay. For your available work hours per week. Okay. These are your assumed starting hours. I thought, okay, 10 to 5 or 6, I get 35 hours a week. I spend about 6 hours not working. 6 hours a week not working. And that's tending errands, household tasks, dogs, whatever. Okay. And then, so my actual work hours a week are simply my assumed hours minus my non-working hours. So my actual work hours available each week is 29 on average. Okay. And then over here, these are my non-billable working hours per week. So I'm at work, but I'm doing things that aren't billable. Okay. Oh, that was the other thing. Zoom meetings. If you're on a committee, if you're on, if you're on a committee and you meet once a week or if you only meet once a month, you can put 0.25 here. So it averages to once a week. If you're part of that, or if you have other things, conference calls, I don't know if people do those anymore, but anyway, that can go right in there. So this total 13.75 is how many hours a week I spend doing non-billable tasks. Now, this number is simply my available work week, my available hours per week, minus this number gives me this number. So even though I think I'm working, or I am working 35 hours a week, I really only have 15 billable hours per week. So if you think, gosh, well, I'm charging $30 an hour, I'm making, $1,200 a week. No, you're not. You're making, 500. And I just made up those numbers. They're probably wrong, but it's a lot less than you think. Okay. So this is your total billable hours per year. It is simply this number times 52. Okay. Is it times 52 or is it times? No, it's times your available. It's times 37. In my case, it's times 37. This is times my available work. The number of weeks I am working a year. Okay. Now, your total non-billable time times your hourly wage per week goes into your overhead. Okay. And what that is just the total of all of these things or these things that give you how much time. This gives you an hourly wage, even when you're doing any of these items. Okay. Answering phone calls, being on Zoom calls, shopping for supplies, tidying up, consultations, all those things, you're still being paid because it's part of your overhead. Okay. And it's the same thing. If I went to work for a tailor, sometimes I'm just tidying up. Sometimes sometimes there's no work and I'm just sitting there waiting because I need to be there in case a client comes in. Okay. I'm still getting paid for that work. And that's what these are for. I am still getting paid for all of my time at work. Okay. And then this breaks it down to my non-billable time per year. So I can still be paid this extra $15,000 even though I'm not billable. Okay. And I did run these numbers and they work. So just, I may be explaining them around the bush, but they work. And the formulas are in there. If you question it and you want to know where they come from, the formulas are right. They're right in here and you can go back and see where the numbers are coming from. Okay. So all of those, again, numbers are automatically generated for you. Now on the total page, okay, don't forget a percentage of shared items. And most of these items are also tax deductible. And it is based on the percentage of if you're working from your house and you have a sewing room, that the percentage of square footage of your room versus the whole house is the percentage that you can deduct. Okay.
Okay.
I use 10% because it's a good average. I think mine is 11%. It's kind of smaller than you think. I'm like, I've got 2 big rooms for my sewing space and my house isn't gigantic. But anyway, again, so you can share, I think here it is. This is the 10% right here. So if your room is bigger or smaller, you can adjust that accordingly as you need. Okay. And this is an item that my understanding is that if you do not have an enclosed space with doors, for instance, a separate room, you cannot deduct a percentage of your business from household things. For instance, if you use a corner of your living room for your sewing stuff, because it's a part of another room, you're not allowed to tax deduct it. Okay. But that doesn't mean you cannot include it in your overhead. Okay. So computer, printer, your internet expense. Okay. How much utilities is spent on your house? The water, the electricity, gas, all that kind of stuff. Whatever your mortgage is, lawn care. People have to see the outside of your house when they come in here. Auto insurance, that's shared. Garden plants, I plant little plants out front so my clients can see them. And actually, I put them out front and then my gardener comes and puts them in for me so that I don't kill them. But anyway, things like that are all part of considered shared expenses because they are part of the house, but they are, in essence, for your sewing room. So that'll give you a little subtotal for things there, and then divide this out percentage for your business. Okay. Now, all of these numbers here are pulled from the previous pages. Okay. Your total average annual non-billable items. Okay. Total average annual non-billable expenses. Wow, that's a really big number. It sure is because it includes all of my my conference fees. It includes my travel. It includes health insurance. It includes dental. It includes a gym membership. All those things. It is right in this number. Okay. Total shared expenses. That's from right here. Okay. Total non-billable time per year multiplied by your personal wage that you're going to pull from this for hourly wage. And for this example, let's see, I put it here somewhere, I'm sure. Okay, I just have to find it. Oh, here it is. Right. Under non-billable time, what is my hourly wage? And again, a really good starting point is at what rate would you work for another company doing the same thing, but being paid per hour plus benefits? Okay. So I just threw 30 in there. It's about 4 times minimum wage for this area. And that is the number that is plugged in here for my non-billable time that was calculated in the last page times $30 an hour is $15,000. Okay. My annual overhead cost is $48,000. And that breaks down my overhead rate per hour is $85. That added into my $30 an hour that I'm going to directly pay myself, my shop rate is $115 per hour.
That is awesome. That is you working for the most dream company ever. And
That's right.
you
And
say, "Oh, that's so expensive." No, 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 no. That that is you just building the most beautiful business you could ever have with all those benefits. And yeah, it's great. Which
mm-hmm.
means
And this is a number, this shop rate, it is still in effect per person. So if Dee Dee comes over and I say, hey, can you help me do this dress for a week? And she comes over and we both work 20 hours on this dress, I'm not billing the client for 20 hours. I'm billing the client for 40 hours because this is man hours.
Mhm.
Okay. So if you have an assistant, okay, this is per person working on that garment or doing whatever. Okay.
Okay. It's
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah.
Okay. And this also, yes, it seems like a really big number, but also if you go in, the example I used was my mechanic. His overhead rate, his shop rate is $140 an hour. Nobody in that shop is getting paid $140 an hour. They're getting paid between $20 and $30 an hour. Okay. This covers all those other expenses. And I personally, if someone told me I charge $115 an hour, I'd kind of like, okay, you may hesitate to do that. How much do you pay your plumbers? How much do you pay
Yeah.
your how much do you pay Jiffy Lube? You're in and out of there in like 20 minutes and you're paying them $50. That's more than $100 an hour. Okay.
Right. Well, and you don't have to say, I am charging you, 115 an hour. You can just say $30 an hour, but this is how much it's going to cost. And they don't need to know how many hours it takes you. They
What
just need
I
to
do,
know what it's going to cost.
right. So what my thing is, I have learned from others' mistakes. And one of those things is I have seen many dressmakers or people who do extensive alterations complain that when they were done, the client didn't want to pay them. And I feel that is because you did not give them a good range up front. Okay. Now, I never tell people how much I charge per hour. I tell them I'm going to do this job and it's going to cost you $500. And they can say yes or no. I don't
That's
tell them how long it's going to take me. I tell them how much the end cost is going to be. Now, I'm one that I do give solid prices up front and then I stick to my prices.
That is
100%.
exactly what I do. And I'll tell you why. Because then I expect them to pay me up front.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just let them know, well, I won't be starting on this work till I'm paid in full. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. And if you're really not sure, what I do for somebody who brings me something that is, for instance, let's say, oh, I have this vintage fur coat and I'm really not sure what's in it, but can we do this and that and that? I'll say, okay, I can repair it and it'll depend on what's in here, but it'll probably cost between $200 and $400. And if it's a little too high for them, they'll tell me and they'll say, well, can we cap it, say, at $300? Okay, I will do $300 worth of work on this item. But that way I'm not, they know what they're coming into up front. Okay.
Mhm.
And some people are okay with, oh yeah, that price range is fine. Anything in there is fine. And that's
Mhm.
okay. So then you can see how much time you spend on it and charge accordingly. But
Yeah.
the biggest thing I find is if people don't know what the charge is and it's way more than you think it is, that's when you're not going to get paid. And
Yeah.
like the biggest thing I think see is people say, like, for instance, at $100 an hour, if I tell someone it'll be, oh, it'll probably take me 2 or 3 hours. Okay. But then it accidentally takes me $5, 5 hours, and I charge them $500. They're like, nope, no, thank you.
That's right. That's right. So, really good communication upfront on pricing is good. And
Yes.
I totally agree with you as far as they don't need to know how much an hour. They just need to know what it's going to cost them. Just last night I had a fitting and there was some very strange boning going across the neckline. And so
Mm-hmm.
it was going out away from her body and I had no idea what it was going to what was entailed, how that boning was applied, if I had access to it or anything. So when we did the pricing, I said, okay, this and this and this and this. I said, and I had a big question mark on this neckline. I says, you owe 600 for the hemming, the bustle, and taking in the sides. And I said, but I really need to investigate inside this bodice before I can tell you what's going on with this neckline. So if you could pay for the rest of it, the 600 now, and then let's have another fitting next week when I've had time to explore and understand what's going on in there, and then I can give you the price on that. And she was very fine, and I communicated it, but I made sure she knew that was an exception because I was completely baffled. I still haven't dug into it. I still have no idea what that boning is doing there. It's very strange. Um, but yeah, when the this just builds your dream business for yourself. And and yes, they don't need to know that it takes me very little time to do a lace hem. If I'm doing a lace hem for 300 bucks, they'll need to know it takes me 45 minutes. It's a skill and I've got it and I know how to do it well and do it right and do it
Mm-hmm.
beautifully. And that's what matters. My price is for what it takes to do it beautifully. And
Mm-hmm.
how much time would it take them? Maybe
Yep.
infinite and just ruin it. Um,
Right.
and, and so, we need to take care of ourselves and take care of our futures. And Barbie, this just so inspired me. And if I had never gone to ASDP conference, I wouldn't have got this training from you. I got out of there saying, I am paying myself a paid vacation. I am doing this. All these things. It was just like blew my mind wide
And
open.
it's so simple. And one of the things that I have realized, excuse me, over the years is it's almost everything with sewing and our business. It's everything is logical and it's not like anything is a secret. But once you say it, everyone's like, oh, right. But it's just, you just need to be told.
Right.
And then everything makes sense. And and it's been the same way. Like, and even whatever sewing skills they are, business skills, it's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense.
It's true. You have just shined a light. I hope to have all of the seamstresses that come to this conference this symposium. But although I do encourage you all to go to ASDP conference because in-person training is amazing, but for this symposium, I just want all of my sewing community to understand and value us as a business and take ourselves serious as a business. And we can be a dream business, the dream employer by giving ourselves our benefits. Okay, have you got anything else to add? I think everyone's brain is probably swirling, and
It
if they
is,
print
but
these
this
off and look at these and then
just
plug in their numbers, it'll be okay.
run your numbers. And even if you're, the first time around, if you just kind of want to play with it, you can go through and, make even if you're just going to guess, like, honestly, most of these are just guesses. I just did this out for a sample for this, but you, I mean, think about the answer before you put it in. Like, how much do I really spend on, you know, chalk or machine needles or, other things? And especially, go down these lists and it'll probably jog your memory on other things like, oh, I also, you know, here's the thing for my clients, I provide Kleenex and I provide bottled water for my clients in case they need it. Okay. Snacks, because that little drawer in the front of your sewing machine that holds the M&Ms, you got to keep
Mhm.
that stocked. So,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
think, oh, not Max. Okay. But all of those things, everything add in there. And you'll think of more things as you go along. Like I'm still thinking of more things. Put it in there and it's part of your overhead. It is part of your overhead.
This is awesome. Barbie, I am so grateful for you sharing this with me and sharing it with all of my symposium attendees. And I I just got to spread the word. You are such a dream and such a great teacher, and I
Go
appreciate this
on.
so
Go on.
much. And sharing this spreadsheet with us, where it does the math for you pretty much. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you so much. This is amazing. Thank you, thank
Yeah,
you.
you're welcome. You're
I
welcome.
appreciate it. All right, we're gonna say goodbye to everybody now. Thank you again.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.